Everyone. My name is Derek Xavier Garcia, as you heard. I'm an oral historian of Mexican American and Chicano history. I'm originally from Ghana, but this is something that's sort of been part of my life for the past almost 10, 15 years. The story of sort of my trajectory has always been, and unfortunately it's not very uncommon, right, is that I discover these histories of struggle and of victory and of self-determination of our people far away from home. This wasn't something that I learned in high school or in public school, private school here in the Valley. I only discovered this when I was getting my degrees really far away from here, Massachusetts and in France. And on that note, rediscovering this and seeing people open up their hearts and their houses to talk about their and share their experiences with Chicano movement activism, with making things better for us, making it possible for people like me and Carlos to do this type of work. We're sitting here in the Mercedes City Council chambers, which I think is very fitting for this type of event because things were heavy.
We made it.
We made it. And so I'm very proud to be here to moderate this roundtable, which is really designed to be a conversation between our panelists who have graciously offered their time and their words today, and a conversation for you all too, to have the space to ask questions and discover this together. And so without further ado, I'll let my panelists introduce themselves.
Petra Guerra was a student at Jacinto Trevino.
Francisco Briones, and in the time that I was there at the colegio, started out as a graduate student, became the director of the GED program, then the director of the undergraduate program, and then the director of the graduate program, and then retired, quote unquote. Okay, so that's my different titles there at the colegio. Really appreciate this opportunity to be here with you guys. Telling Lali, we were talking earlier that this event gives us us as some of the original founders of the colegio some sense of a closure to our lives. I'm sorry to say that there are many of our hermanos and hermanas are no longer with us, who were part of the original 15. Los echamos menos, los echamos menos. Estoy viendo las fotos y me traen muchos recuerdos. I see those pictures and it brings back a lot of memories. Just bear with us. We're going to be trying to answer your questions. So sorry for the long-winded introduction.
Buenos días y bienvenidos. Muchas gracias por estar aquí con nosotros, unidos todos juntos, celebrando este magnífico evento. Thank you very much for being here in solidarity with us in celebrating the Colegio Jacinto Trevino. And I want to take a brief 2 minutes, not 2 minutes, a minute, less than a minute, to thank Derek Garcia and Carlos. These two young men, as you may know, have dedicated their lives to the research, to the documentation of Colegio Jacinto Trevino. And that's what the Colegio, to me, is all about. The young people of tomorrow that will pick up on kill what we started and promote it to future generations. So thank you guys. Appreciate both of you very much.
And I'm Lali Sainz Moeno, originally from a town north of Mercedes, La Villa. Attended Edgar Chelsea High School, went to Pan Am for, I call it Pan Am, okay, because that was the name, for 2 years. And then I was at Colegio Jacinto Trevino from day one. I was involved with the Mayo Conference in La Lomita, where we had students from all over the nation attend. We had Maya groups, we had Mecha groups, we had Mexican American students. We had students from all over the nation. It was a wonderful conference, and that's where we decided that we wanted to control our own health, our own education, and our own economics. And I was involved with the education. Well, I was told to stay there by Jose Angel Gutierrez. Jose Angel said, you go there. He assigned us to different areas, some of the students, and we had to be there. We attended all the seminars. And at that seminar, that's where we said, okay, since we don't have a building, we're going to stay here in La Lomita, and we'll just take over, and we'll have our classes here. And that's what we did. We stayed there for a few weeks until we got thrown out by the padres, the oblate padres, throw us out. So we'll talk more about this, but that's where I'm coming from. And I stayed at the colegio. I helped develop curriculum. I worked very closely with Narciso. I was kind of his assistant with Narciso Martin Aleman, who was also my cousin. And then Victor Moreno, who was my husband, and he just passed away about 2 months ago. Victor was he was the original I don't know what the word is, because he helped work with Narciso in administration. We set it up, the colegio. He had the contract with Antioch College, developed the graduate curriculum. He also helped develop the curriculum for Escuela Tlatelolco in Denver. And so he and Narciso were into academics. They were serious about it, and we had to study under them. And that's why a lot of us, sometimes we didn't like them, we don't want to go to all these classes, but we had to go. So that's where I'm coming from. So we'll talk more about it later.
And Dr. Guerra, please.
Yeah, as a farm worker, or as farm workers, during my time, we traveled all over the place, but there were so many places we couldn't even get food on the way where we were going. Like, we used to go to Idaho, and then Utah, and then California to pick grapes, and then Plainview, Texas to pick cotton. But one of the things that it has always been really important to me is not just the history part, but education. So when I got what happened is somebody who was in the Vista, I don't know if any of you guys are familiar with the Vista Project, where the rich white boys didn't have to go to Vietnam because they would work in the community with us, and they were working with us through, in the migrant. And then what happened is one of them suggested that I should have a job out of the migrant stream, so I did. And then somebody else said, well, why don't you start working for the Migrant Council? And all of a sudden, I am the parent coordinator for the Utah Migrant Council, 4th grade education. And it's like, oh, shoot, what's going on? And before I knew it, I was actually in charge, and then moved on to Utah, to Idaho. And then we started the Migrant Council in Idaho. And again, I was in charge of all the daycare centers, getting money from DC to run them. And while all this is going on there, I really didn't think, even though we were fighting for migrant daycares and wages and health and all those things, I never thought about it as revolutionary until I started going to Corky Gonzalez in Denver, going to his center, and Lalo Delgado coming over and training us, and the Teatro Campesino, and that really got me going. I go, oh, there's more we can do. And then this guy's, Jacinto Trevino, came to Idaho to recruit.
I recruited.
So it was about 20 of them, and they all stayed in my house. 20 of them, okay? They all stayed in my house. And because I was so much into teatro, because of Teatro Campesino, they recruited me, and my kids and I came to Jacinto Trevino. And that's where I realized the power that everybody that was at Jacinto Trevino had, because there was the walkouts, there was the horrible police brutality, and all those things. Granted, education is my very important subject, because they mistreated us so bad at the schools. They would give us They would shower us when we would get there to get the brown stuff off and all those things, you know. And so when I came to Jacinto Trevino and did teatro with some of these guys, and we would go out and mention those things. For example, we had one of them where we would sit down, and then I was a teacher, and as the teacher, I would say, Snow White, taking attendance. And everybody would go, Snow White, ¿quién es Snow White? Snow White. Blancanieves, yeah, whatever. Corny Queen. And everybody's going, who's Corny Queen? Cornelio Reina. And some of you know who Cornelio Reina was, right? So, you know, things like that. So to this day, all this stuff I teach in my classes, okay? Whether I'm working with high school students to do credit or at the university. So for me, that's really important. Jacinto Trevino helped me so much to be able to develop all those powers that we had.
Petra, thank you for sharing that. And on that note, I was hoping that we could talk a little bit about everyone's experiences growing up in the public school system in the Valley and traveling the United States before getting into the colegio. Does that sound all right with you all?
Sure. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Whoever wants to join in.
next?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Okay.
I'll give you a chance.
That's what I think. So I told Derek, be careful because how much time do we have? Because we all like to talk.
You're all well spoken. That's what it is. Well spoken.
It's the I don't know where to begin. To my recollection, my experience comes from my dad, my father, the sangre. When he in the 30s, when he was in his 20s, we grew up in a little town called San Nicolás de los Garzas, to the north side of Monterrey, and my father he had his own business, but he also had an interest in justice. So he became involved with was promoting the agradistas. The agradistas is the equivalent to farm workers, okay, in Mexico. So my dad became the president of the chapter of the agradistas in San Nicolás, and he would tell us stories about him going in and participating in pickets and marches and whatnot, arguing for the rights of farm workers, even in the 30s. It hadn't even gotten into the 40s, but this was in the 30s. And so I grew up with that kind of blood in my system. As I grew older, I began to understand what my dad would tell us about the injustice in this world. Because when I was in school, for instance, my name is Briones, but in some circles, and I'll just say some circles, I was Brinies, Broinies, all kinds of things. So people kept trying to change my name, and because of that, I would get into trouble with the teachers. Anyway, it got to the point that being a brown skin, like many of us, that school counselors would just outright tell you, you're not going to make it. You're not going to be any success. And that was the response I was getting because I was asking about college prep programs in high school. There's no such thing like that for Mexicans. Okay, so school counselors would tell me, you're not college material. So they convinced me to think that my future was going to be bagging groceries, which is nothing wrong with that, or pumping gas, nothing wrong with that. But that was going to be my future. And I would say to myself, no, that's not going to be enough. I was so convinced that when I was about to graduate from high school, that my future was very poor. Okay, que no iba a llegar a nada. So one of the things I entertained and I started doing was I was enlisting with the Army in I graduated in '66, by the time I finished boot camp, it would have been 67. By the time I got assigned, I got an assignment, it would have been in 68. And if you've seen those movies like Platoon and Hamburger Hill, man, that's a scary thing for me because in 68, I would have wound up right in the middle of those things. And that all changed because my older brother, had just gotten back from Vietnam, and he was waiting for me at the bus station. When I got off the bus, me dio unos corrones. Don't be so stupid. Just go through the exam or do the whatever you need to do, but don't sign anything. We'll go. I'll go home. At the time we lived in Harlingen, in one of the colonias, and he said, "I'll go home and we'll figure out a way to avoid you going into the army." Because this is what my brother said. You want to kill our mother? Because as mothers, you all worry when your sons or daughters are in danger, okay, or in a situation that's very risky and perilous. So that's what my brother said. You want to kill our mother with a worry about me being in Vietnam at that time. That said a lot. That said a lot to me. Okay, so I listened to him very closely, and so to make the long story short, we had a talk, and we would migrate primarily to Ohio. Okay, we started going to Michigan, but then we started going to Ohio for pickles and tomatoes primarily. And my parents would save money, and that savings would allow me to pay tuition at Pan Am, Tamaulipas. So I was the first in my family to graduate with an undergraduate program, an undergraduate degree in history and art. What I was studying in history taught me a lot about the lack of history for our people. Okay, that there was no mentioning of us in the history books. You could read about the Chinese, you read about the black, but primarily the white. And what caught my eye once was a book, a chapter in the history books that addressed manifest destiny. Manifest destiny. I don't know if any of you have heard that term, but manifest destiny is a philosophy or the ideology of white Anglo-Saxon Protestants, WASP, to think that the North American continent is meant for the white people. Okay, so if you follow history, you'll see the 13 original colonies, and then the purchase of the Louisiana Purchase, and then on to the war with Mexico, quote unquote, with the war with Mexico to take over the Southwest. The Southwest, okay, was according to the history books, was our original home, Aztlán, okay, Aztlán. From there, the Aztecs, the Mexicas moved to Mexico, traveled to Mexico, and founded Tenochtitlan. So those are the little bits and tidbits of history that got me to thinking we need to address something. My father's blood in me about the unions, farm worker, civil rights, my understanding of history or the lack of our people, and so on. When I graduated from college, from Pan Am, I had no idea what to do, so I started applying for a teaching job. I applied from Roma all the way to Brownsville up to Raymondville. Nada, because the positions for history teachers were going to the PE coaches, and the superintendents or the personnel office would outright tell you those jobs or set aside for PE coaches. So you're not going to get a job. And sure enough, I didn't get a job. So ahora sí que voy a hacer. I have a piece of paper that says I have a degree, but I can't find a job. Okay, which is of course true nowadays. Even then and nowadays, to many of our people, you have degrees, but they're not recognized by whoever, okay? So a friend of ours, in fact, from here from Mercedes, told me about some a program that was being organized, and the graduate program, and that the recruiters were in Edinburgh, Aurelio Montemayor and Carmen Loma Garzas. I went to see him. And that's only there was a graduate program being organized for through Antioch. So sounds interesting. I don't have anything else to do, so I signed up, and then I began to find out that it was the experience of a lifetime to develop a Chicano college, and after I found out what the true purpose of the graduate program was, I said I really got into it. I really got into it with heart and soul. And that's why, like Lali and I are talking, this event brings to us some sense of closure. Mm-hmm. Because after 50 years, we finally say, we're not going to say we made it, but because there's still a lot of work to be done, a lot of work. And I hope that during the day that we discuss issues and points that we may be able to maybe get them to surface and discuss them. And maybe prompt some kind of motivation, if you will, in some of you, especially the younger folks, to go out and take on initiatives that help our people. Because believe me, very little things have changed. Okay, if you look at the statistics, very little has changed. In the 70s, the unemployment rate was for our people was the 7, 8%, 12%. You look at the employment record nowadays, the same thing, and perhaps it's even worse now, unemployment. If you look at the per capita income for across the board, the numbers have increased over the years, but proportionate, the income of Mexicanos, Chicanos is a lot less than what the state has as a per capita. Let me give you an example. According to some, from my recollection, the per capita income in Texas is in the neighborhood of 54, 60,000. Every person has an average income of 60,000. For the Hispanic, Chicano, Mexicano, the average is about 24,000. So you see that there's a discrepancy here, 60 to 24,000. So, but we manage. See, we still manage. So anyway, that's the background that I come from. Okay, my mother and my wife told me, "Tú hablas mucho, ya, párale." Yes, so I'll try and leave it there for now because I still have a lot of things to discuss with you.
Me too.
Okay. Next.
All right. Well, Lupe Cáceres here, and I was very fortunate to have had that opportunity to be part of the colegio. I feel that to me, the establishment of the colegio, the founding of the colegio was to me a miracle. And if you read my book, which will cost you, and I hope you buy it. I just gave my original copy to the mayor, but it will tell you the story of our family as growing up, and it will narrate the struggle that we went through as migrant farm workers to get to the time of the colegio. But I will cite a paragraph in that book to give you an idea. I was 14 years of age and had not enrolled in public schools yet. I had gone to 2 schools One was in Oklahoma, and the duration of that time in that school was 1 day. By the time I came home, my family was already moving to another farm. And that pretty much defines the struggle that I went through as a youth. In somehow I had fallen totally in a spell of learning. I wanted so bad to go to school. I wanted so bad to learn. And so I taught myself how to read and write in the back of the pickup going from one state to the other. But in 1964, my father passed away, and we were up north when they detected tuberculosis in his lungs, and he ended up in Harlingen and passed away. And we were picking cotton in La Paloma, Texas at the time. When he died, not only did we lose him, we lost our only vehicle that we had, a small pickup. And there were 8 children. I was one of the oldest. And my mother was 30-something years of age. And the day that he died, we were staying with an aunt in a very small house, two-room house. And we did not have enough money to pay for funeral costs. So we had to have my father living there at this small house. It was very reduced. People that came, our relatives, had to scoot through to the sides because there was no room. It's very small. We were confronted with the first problem, and that was $54 to pay the priest to do the religious ceremonies, which $54 to us was $1 million. And we did not have $3. And the reason I remember that is because my mother very early said, "Mijo, we don't even have coffee for the people that are coming today." And so as I was watching my dad in the coffin and his hands were folded as such, I began to daydream, think, analyze, etc., the condition, the situation, and I looked at his hands and I said, how many bushes of tomatoes did you pick in your life? How many harvests did you accomplish? How many American homes did you feed as you worked from a very early age as a farm worker? He was born in Corpus Christi. He started working, he was 12. Officially. Before that, he was working unofficially. But then, I looked at his hand and said, how much did you serve this country? Did you give to this country? And today you died without $1 in your hands. And of all the analyzing that I had done prior to that, all the experience that we had in an immigration raid, going through restaurants and not being served, my conscience had been developing and questioning what's going on in this country. Aren't we supposed to be Americans, citizens as well? And by the time that my father passed away, we were already not conflict, but we were having a lot of very tedious and unraveled discussions about what was going on in our lives. But, I questioned that, and I said, now you leave us homeless, penniless. And what are we to do in this country? Do we have given my... That all came to me and said, we really don't have a guarantee as citizens of this country that somebody will take care of it. And we had no idea about social services in those days. Nobody would go into the labor camp. Sometimes we had religious people come over. But my dad had a very firm commitment to that. And he said, don't ask for charity. We don't want charity. We don't want free clothes. We don't want free food. What we want is a fair wage for them to pay us what our labor is worth. Then we can buy our own. Then we can take care of our own families. That was his mentality. But anyway, from there, I went through a series of explorations. And from there, we came to this beautiful, lovely town called Mercedes, Texas, which we owe so much. Our family owes so much to this town. We ended up in Colorado Street. And in those days, talking what, 65, we had gangs, not the gangs that you're thinking about, we had other kind of gangs. These women in La Colonia, I call them gangs because they were always ganging together. What's going on? And they would see us in our condition, and the second day we were there, people started pouring their love to us, clothes, food, anything we needed, we got from the surroundings, from our community. That's why I'm in debt to my community, and I'm in debt to this town. I was telling the mayor I'm going to come officially and thank him. But anyway, and I say that in my book. But anyway, I entered school here in Mercedes. Where are we? Yeah, right across over there. It was junior high. And because of lack of records, I had no records. They didn't know where to place me. So they were having a lot of difficulty. The secretary and the principal were having a lot of problems trying to figure out what to do with me. And I noticed that, and I said, I'm in trouble. I better do something, And so I saw a stack of books, and I grabbed one and started reading it out loud. Yo, este loco. And so the principal comes to me and says, you know how to read some? I said, yes, sir. Where did you learn how to read? You said, I thought you had not gone to school. I said, I started reading by myself in the back of the pickup, looking at neon signs, picking up words, putting them together. Said, well, then I know how to place you, where to place you. So I was assigned to remedial 7th grade. Anyway, I caught up with the rest of my classmates in a few months, and then I ended up in junior high and then high school. High school, with all due respect, and I don't blame any specific person, and I don't name that person, because I truly understand that person who kicked me out of high school. It was another time. It was the mentality of the time. That was supposed, he was doing only what he was asked of him to do. And that was to confront my history, my culture, my pride. And so I was unceremoniously asked to leave school one day, which means kick out. And I went from there very quickly into several programs with the help again of my community. The people around me and my mother said, you're not stopping from seeking your education. You are going to find another place. Y las señoras venían, come on, Lupito, you can't give up. Don Emilio, a little store across the street, an angel sent to me from God. He said, no, I'm going to help you. Eventually, I ended up at the University of Wisconsin to get my GED. And one day, after 2 years, as soon as I got there, I said, I'm in the right place. I am in the right place. I fell in love again with education. I said, this is where I wanted all my life. I would read on to the early hours of the morning. I wouldn't stop. In 2 months, I graduated. I became a model student. And not only that, I was hired by the same university to become a recruiter and a counselor for the high school equivalency program. And the first high school they sent me to recruit was Mercedes, believe it or not. But anyway, one day I'm at the city, at the student council, the student lounge, and there's a giant screen there. Well, not giant screen, giant television. And I'm watching it, and it's CBS News. And guess who's being interviewed? Lali Saenz,
Walter Cronkite.
Walter Cronkite, She's on television. I'm like, that looks like a Chicana. In those days, you don't see Mexican Americans unless they stole something. A television.
And then Rather too interviewed us.
So I said, and they talked about the walkout in El Chelsea, and I said, it's time for me to go back home. The revolution is on. And I went to my counselor, I went to my friends there at the university, I have to go back to South Texas. And they said, history's calling, we'll support you. I ended up here, Mercedes, came back to my hometown. We established one of the largest Mayo chapters on Georgia Street. Instead of kids, I had kids dropouts every day there. We started classes there. We started a daycare center. We started a clinic. We started a breakfast program in the same house. My poor mother, she went through all that. And again, destiny. One day, Lali walks in and says, Lupe, what are you doing here? We got the rest of the Mayos in the valley that you got to meet. I thought I was all here by myself. And we ended up in La Lomita in 1969 with her and Narciso Aleman. That same day at 2 o'clock, I heard it for the first time. We are tired of walkouts and demonstrations. We need to build our own college. And I laughed. I said, this guy smoked the wrong stuff. Our own college? I mean, 2 years ago, I was a dropout. Kicked me out of high school. And it took a while for me to, you know, to process that information. By late that afternoon, we were out close to the river, and I asked Narciso again, are we for sure, are we going to build our own college? Yes, we are. And the reason I mentioned the funeral, my father's funeral, is because at that time when I was going through that consternation, watching what was going on with my family, I developed not hatred. I never developed hatred. To this day, I believe in a country of what we are in America. Different identities, different nationalities. I love all people. We love our people. But I developed this courage of not turning back. And that courage is what took us, the members of the founders of the Colegio, to grasp an idea so beyond, so ahead of its time, and stick to it, and go through it, and make it a reality. And that's why I said at the beginning, the Colegio to me was a miracle. Thank you very much.
What a hard act to follow. Briefly, a little bit about me, then. I want to go into the Colegio, what we actually did there. I'm from La Villa, daughter of also farm workers. My dad was the troquero, and we used to migrate to Michigan, Ohio, Indiana. We did that every year. One day I came back late. We were always late to school coming back. We would end up October, November, we would come back. Well, they would send us to the principal's office because they thought we were bad, coming in late and everything. So there I am with this white male, terrified, and he had his suit on and everything, and he said, you're not going to be able to get into any of the classes because you're late. And I said, but why? I can make up my work. One of the teachers said that I can make up work. How come you are not letting me? And he said, you cannot go in there. You cannot go to biology or algebra or none of those classes. You know, I didn't know what to do, and I didn't know how I was going to let my parents know that I couldn't get into classes. And they put me in library and other little thingies, okay? And I hated that part. I hated that because I wanted to be a teacher at first. And so I wanted to go to Pan Am. And okay, that happened year after year. We had to face the principal, all of us. There was a big group of us at Edgar Chelsea High School. Okay, when the day of graduation, I'm rushing a little bit here. the day before graduation, they called us in to the counselor's office, and the counselor told me right away, "You're going to Harlingen Trade School." And where is that at? I don't have a right to Harlingen. I don't even know where that's at. And I want to go to Pan Am because there was one guy from La Villa going to Pan Am, and he had a car. And my dad, my dad had already talked to this person and asked him if he could pick me up, and my dad would give him $1.50 a week for gas, so that he could take me to Pan Am.
30 cents a gallon.
We had it all arranged. My dad had it arranged for me. So it just broke my heart when I went home and told my dad, "Dad, guess what? They want to send me to Harlingen." "¿Pa dónde?" "Pa Harlingen, Dad." And he said, "No, vas a ir para Harlingen. Vas a ir a Limburgo." He called it Limburgo. "Vas a ir para allá, Pan Am. Please, Dad, send me to Pan Am." So anyway, he did. He tried, and we talked. That guy took me to school for about a year. Anyway, that's that part. I had to leave Pan Am because we were involved in Mayo. I got recruited in the state of Michigan by the Quakers. I don't know if you guys, if anybody in here knows who the Quakers are. It's a wonderful group of people, religious, anti-war, and that's what I liked about them. And so they recruited me in Michigan to work in the migrant schools. And so they went to the fields. I was working in the fields, and I saw these two white gentlemen coming, and I go, "Oh no, they're going to fire us." You know, I thought we were going to be fired, and it was going to be my fault, and my dad would be upset. That's what I thought. Okay, I saw them walking. No, they came to offer me a job. And so my dad had to ask the contratista and see if they let me work, you know, in the schools, and they did. Okay, so from there, I came back to Texas. And one day I was sitting in the front because I couldn't go to Pan Am that semester. I was late again. And I was crying in the front door in my house in La Villa. Nobody was around, just me outside. And this station wagon pulls in front of my front of the house. And another white male gets out. And I got really scared this time. And I ran inside and told my mom, "Mother, there's un hombre, you know, he's coming in." She said, "That's okay, we'll talk to him. Go ahead inside the house, you know." So I went inside, and it was Ed Kruger. I don't know if you guys, anybody knows who Ed Kruger was. It was Ed Kruger from the Quakers. So he told me he was Ed Kruger from the Quakers, and the Quakers from Michigan had told him about me, and that he was there to offer me a job in San Juan. But how can I go to San Juan? I don't have a car, you know, so he said, "We'll come for you because it's important that you work with us." Okay, so that's how I started working. I ended up working with Colonia del Valle and the United Farm Workers. I went straight into the United Farm Workers. Okay, so from there, I got very active with Mayo, with one of the leaders. I organized the Edgar Chelsea walkout, and I also helped with other walkouts. I'm not going to say names because there were several other walkouts in other parts of the state, Waco, San Antonio. In Mayo, was very active, and I was very fortunate to have been recruited by Jose Angel Gutierrez to join Mayo. And I asked Mr. Kruger, "Can I do this? I would always ask permission from them, from my bosses and from the Quakers. Is it okay, you guys, if I get into Mayo? Because Mayo is very tough, and I want to be tough too. I want to protect my dad, who's been discriminated left and right by the farmers." And so they said, "Yeah, you can do that. Just don't get into any violence." So I said, "Okay, I won't." Wrong, I did get into some of that. But they were still very good with me. Anyway, they were kind of my mentors. All right, so in Mayo, we got recruited to the conference, and one of my jobs was to go around the valley to all the Mayo chapters. I went to Mission, Edinburgh, Far, Alamo, Mercedes, Harlingen. We didn't go to Brownsville. I didn't have a car to go that far. Okay, so just around La Villa, you know, okay. And that's how we started. We were at the Mayo conference, and like Lupe said, we had great leadership, great. We had Jose Angel, Narciso Aleman, And the Brown Berets came from all over the nation. And remember, they came from Los Angeles. It was fascinating, just fascinating for us to be together. And I don't know if you also know that we painted the Virgen de Guadalupe brown. No, it was La Virgen Maria, right? Yeah. It was Maria because Guadalupe was already brown. That's what we said. We said, don't do Guadalupe, she's already brown. So we painted La Virgen Maria, sprayed her brown because we said everything in this building is going to be brown. And that's what we thought. Okay, so in there, that's where we decided that we want, like Lupe already mentioned, we wanted our own school. So I was in that seminar with Narciso. And from there, they said, okay, we're going to take over La Lomita. We're going to stay here, and we're going to have our school here. Okay, so we all followed instructions. We stayed there. Well, the Oblate fathers came, los padres, who owned La Lomita. And we thought, but you're padres, why don't you let us stay here? We're not doing anything wrong. No, they sent the priests from San Antonio, from all over to come and get us out. So we had to go around looking for a location. Where do we meet? We already had students like Lupe, and a lot of people were already in. It was mostly Mayos that were in there. Okay, so then we found, I think it was Nita Jo Gonzalez who found Mercedes. Nita Jo was the daughter of Corky Gonzalez, who was married to Narciso. I think some of you know that. Okay, so Nita found the building in, here in Mercedes. And so the fight started, guys. We were so busy trying to start a school, trying to develop our own curriculum, trying to find the people who would support us. And here was the city of Mercedes. And this is why with me, this is kind of weird for us to be here, which is also good for us to be here. But they were bad with us. The city, the City of Mercedes Police Department, the church here, not the Catholic Church, the others, remember? The
Baptist Church.
Oh, man. Oh, we were accused of being communist, and we all would meet in the room and we'd say, communist? Yeah. We're Democrats from Texas, We were all Democrats. What are you talking about? Who is a communist? We didn't know anybody. Well, you're socialists. Socialists? Who are they? None of us were socialists. Well, you have guns. We do. We didn't have any guns or any drugs. Guys, we didn't have any money. Remember, Pancho? Yeah. We didn't have any money to eat. I couldn't eat. I had to find a ride to La Villa, 10 miles away, to go eat at my mom's, que me diera tortilla con frijoles, And then I would come back to Mercedes because I didn't have money to eat. None of us did. We finally had money later on when Victor and Narciso worked out work study for us through Antioch. They gave us work study funding, and I was like, oh my gosh, that was a lot of money. I got my first check, and I ran to La Villa to give it to my dad. I said, Dad, look I got a real check. So I showed him the check. So I gave it to him. I said, I owe you everything, Dad. You take all the money I make. Even if the day he died, I gave him everything I could, money, everything, cars. I would buy him whatever he wanted. I did that. And I worked just for that, to give them whatever they wanted for my parents. They put up with me. I was arrested. I was in Denver. I was all over the place. And Mother would say, una mujer, me hacía, ¿qué andas haciendo? They would get on my case. I said, Mother, I'm dedicated to what I have to do. And then my mother's brother would say, Juanita, va a andar con los hombres allá. All she's going to do is be with the men all over the place. I go, man, it's Pancho and Lupe.
You want to call them man? Go ahead and call them man. I'm okay with that.
I didn't see them like that. I didn't see them as boyfriends. I saw them, we were like family, all of us. And I traveled with them. I traveled with men most of the time when I was with Mayo. And we didn't mess around. And I told Mother, we don't mess around with men, Mother. The men are there, and I do like them, yes. But all I can do is look at them, I can't do anything because I had to prove as a Mayo woman, and the Mayo men too. We had to prove that we were dedicated to what we were doing and that we were not going to mess around with men or women and that we were not going to be drinking, no drugs, no alcohol, no guns, nothing. And Narciso was adamant. Okay, now for the students, why did we have to stay this discipline? Because what Narciso used to call the dominant culture, which was at that time it was white, right now it's not anymore. But the dominant culture was waiting for us to make mistakes. And they were waiting for us, they were waiting to catch us with a gun or to catch us fighting, or they were waiting for us. That minister, always waiting for us to do something bad. And we did not do that. We were in class. We were, like Lupe said, we were very fortunate because we got to meet Dr. Ernesto Galarza. We got to meet Dr. Americo Paredes. We had classes with them. We went to San Antonio to study under Pablo Freire at a seminar who did Pedagogy of the Oppressed. Yeah. Then we went to Cuernavaca to study with Ivan Illich, a Mexican philosopher. I went to New York to study with the Young Lords. I went to Chicago to study with the Black Panthers. They would send me all over the place and I would go. And this is, talk about learning, guys. Okay, so the colegio was all about learning our own way, the way we wanted to learn. And we did have the basics. We did have health, education, and writing, right, Pancho? We had to write. One of the pictures you have of me in the over there in the exhibit, I was showing a picture. I had to do the history of the farm workers in the valley. And that took me a long time, but I had to do that project. I went to libraries, I went all over the place. They would make us read, they would make us study. It wasn't people outside had no clue what we were doing. And they would accuse us too. So it's very emotional for us, especially for me, to be here. And I want to thank Derek and Dr. Cantu and everybody else who organized this, because I had to think twice whether I come or not, because I said, why are we being honored when at the time we needed them, they weren't there? You know, why are we here when these people didn't support us when we needed them? And we almost got killed, some of us. I had a gun put on my head like that. Okay, and that's not, anyway, scary, guys. Okay, so nobody supported us at that time. And now, Edgar Chelsea High School had a closure under Dr. Panem did it, Dr. Alvarez and Dr. Guajardo. They did a wonderful 50th anniversary of the Edgar Chelsea walkout, and we did closure. They invited me back there as the organizer of that walkout. And I feel kind of badly being there because I said, why are they inviting us when they, me echaron la policía, nos aventaron a la cárcel, and now they want to give me an award? No, I don't want your award. So that's what I said at the beginning. Please, no awards for me. I'm not, no, you give it to somebody else. Okay, so it's very emotional, guys. So we did that closure. And I was talking to Pancho, and I said, Pancho, maybe this is our closure here today with you guys. And I heard...
I don't like that word, closure.
About the colegio.
Oh, okay.
No, we ain't stopping.
No, yes.
Going to the hospital Monday, so...
Okay, so hearing the mayor talk this morning, Mayor Montoya, was kind of put things into perspective for me, because he touched on a lot of things that were very emotional for me. Hearing the mayor say what he said about us being very productive for him and for the city and exemplary to other students, we saw that, but nobody else would see that at that time. We knew that we were doing good work. I mean, Lupe did an incredible job with the teatro. Nobody else has done a teatro like Lupe did. Pancho developed the programs like we developed excellent programs, all of us. And I mean, we were into it, guys. And I didn't get married till way after because I had to stay single until it was very hard, but I did it. I stayed single until I was done with the colegio. And that was, like my first day at Pan Am, my uncle told my mother, no la dejes ir a Pan Am porque iba a haber muchos hombres. Don't let her go to Pan Am because there are a lot of men there. And then I was wearing red lipstick. And my uncle said, mira, she has red lipstick, red nails. What do you think is going to happen, Juanita? So I said, all right, maybe he's right. Hey, that's not a bad idea. I'll see all these guys. I mean, La Villa didn't have that many guys there. We had all grown up together like brothers and sisters in La Villa, and, we weren't attracted to each other, So I said, I'll look for somebody in Pan Am. Well, I went to my first class, and sure enough, there were all these men in my class, cowboys from Starr County, from Rio Grande City, from Edinburgh, from the ranchos, from Mercedes. They were from all over. And I look all around me and I go, ooh, my uncle was right. There's a lot of men in here. So I went home, La Sonsa, ignorant me. I went home, told my Mom, there are a lot of men there. And I like the mother. And she said, Te dije, I told you so that you were going to look at the men. Mother, I have to see them. They're nice, So anyway, that's where I come from, okay? So I had to stay single, a lot of us did. Yeah. We got criticized as women for being at the colegio with a lot of men. I got criticized day and night, but I didn't care. I didn't care. They can criticize all they want. I know what I'm doing. And I ended up going to California. I live in La Jolla. And I did a lot of work. There I am right there with the yellow shirt behind Narciso.
And that's Narciso
That's
Alemán.
me right there with the long hair. The yellow shirt, that's me right there. I ended up, and I'm going to tell you this because I want the students to know that activism can be very productive, very. Today is the No Kings protest in the nation. Yep. And I hope some of you can still go. I'm going to try to find something. Yes. I was invited to the United Nations in March of 2018. And I was invited to speak on what I had done with farm workers and with women. And I was fascinated with the building and everything because I had studied about the UN in my civics class in high school. And that's where I learned about voting, the minimum wage, everything. It was in civics. And so at Ed Cauchaza, that was the only class I liked from a whole 4 years that I was there. and I was there at the UN, and at first I totally freaked out, like, I can't talk here, man. I was like, oh no, what am I gonna do? So then I have heard women from all the countries were speaking, from Africa, from Cuba. We had women from Cuba. They were right next to me. And it was my turn. And then I said, okay, La Villa, you better come through, So I got up and I said, okay, I need to talk. And that's what I did. I went ahead. And then the Secretary General requested that we turn in our documents. And so I was the only one of the all the women that I had my documents ready. Why? Because we were required at the colegio. We were always required to have our documents and backup of everything. Because we used to be accused of things like, oh, no saben qué están haciendo. They don't know what they're doing. Oh, no, we do. We got this from Pablo Freire, And I was ready. So I did that, and I also won the California Peace Prize from the state, and I won over 100 or so recognitions. And all because of Colegio Jacinto Trevino. So you can do that too, all of you. Don't be afraid. Oh, one more thing before I turn it back here. The electoral process. Latinos don't vote, like you know. And you better get with it, guys.
Yep.
All of you young people.
Yep.
Okay, there's not going to be any changes. School boards are elected, and they are the ones who implement the changes we did. So if you don't get those right people in there, and I saw the turnout of the valley in my Google, I Googled the voting turnout. It was terrible, embarrassing. So if you're not registered, you better get there, and you better get to the polls, all of you. Please practice that, if nothing else, at least for us, who work so hard so that we could have a word up there in school boards and everything, okay? Okay, I stop.
Amen. I like to acknowledge some people in the audience who were members of the Chicano movement that were there during those days. They're not in this board or with us here, but they're here. Professor Villarreal, stand up,
Yes,
sir.
the Brown Berets.
Leader of the Brown Berets, who has
Yes.
been so instrumental for years and years
Yes.
since he was very,
Yes.
very young.
Yes.
We know you a lot, brother. Stand up. Jorge. Teresita Garcia, member of the Mayo, agitator, very instrumental in the, and I'm gonna read this, it take me 1 minute, I swear to God, I will never say another word.
Promises.
Viva
Yep.
el colegio, Viva el Colegio Rio Grande Valley Committee, Colegio Jacinto Trevino Photo Exhibit Panel, September 18, 10:15 a.m. Percez Library. And good morning, everyone. It is an honor to be here among friends, fellow panelists, and all of you who have taken the time to explore this exhibit and to remember. 4 years ago, a small but determined committee was formed, Viva el Colegio. Our mission has been simple but urgent: to keep the memory of Colegio Jacinto Trevino alive, to preserve its legacy, and to reconnect it with people of this community. We meet regularly with individuals, school representatives, students, and parents. We've also maintained a weekly column in the Mercedes Enterprise. Where's that man from he left already?
It was here.
A respected local newspaper where we write anecdotes, tell stories, and document the historical significance and events surrounding the Colegio. My book, Blame the Sun, offers a deeply personal perspective reflecting on Colegio's development through the lens of a co-founding family. My whole family was involved in the Colegio. But it also mirrors the collective outcry of thousands of farm workers who had been denied an education for generations. Today, that story continues in a new form, a series of children's books that pass on the values, struggles, and spirits that the movement to the future generations, so they never forget the foundation laid by those who fought for freedom of mind and expression. Because the Colegio is not just history, it is a piece of our collective identity, a living testimony of educational reform, cultural pride, and Chicano resilience. As we reflect on the photographs and memories displayed today, I ask you to remember what life was before 1969. Many Mexican Americans in Texas, education was more of an obstacle than an opportunity. We were labeled as not college material. We were tracked into vocational programs. We were denied access to college preparatory courses. We were punished, sometimes harshly, for speaking our own native Spanish. For many of us, school was not a place for growth. It was a place of silence, shame, and survival. That's why the founding of the Colegio Jacinto Trevino mattered so deeply. It was our answer to injustice. It was our declaration that we belong in higher education. We belong in leadership. We belong in the rewriting of our own story. But there's something else we must not forget, and that's where I challenge all of us. When we look back at what's been written, remember, about the Colegio, we often see gaps. especially in how the people of Mercedes and the surrounding towns helped build and sustain this movement. What's often missing from the record is the grassroots power that was born right here. It was here in Mercedes where community members created daycare centers, launched youth theater and summer programs, monitored schools like Santa Maria, and organized against police brutality, helping remove a corrupt police chief and department. We shared knowledge and strategy with local political groups. This community didn't just support the colegio, it became the colegio. So today, as we admire these powerful images, I ask what happened to the other organizations born from this people's movement, like Su Clínica Familiar, Organizaciones Unidas, the United Farm Workers, and the legacy of their leaders. What became of the thousands who stood guard, who fought, who built these projects with their bare hands and sacred hopes? And why have some of these grassroots legacies been turned into corporations? Their original purpose diluted and their true names whitewashed from memory. We must not let that happen. We must speak the names, Arturo Garza, Señora Silva, Julio, and many Marias who carried the fight forward. The Becerra brothers, the Trevino family, Lonches, Teresa Navarro, Chale Leal, and who lead the way here in Mercedes Tejas. Must remember those people. Thank you very much.
So we have time for some comments from Petra, and then I want to get to, before the audience questions, to speak about a little bit of the impact of the community in the curriculum and in the colegio with the teatro. But Petra.
Yeah, I think you heard how they got started and how they started Jacinto Trevino. When, as farm workers, we were a little bit far. You know, we wouldn't get here until maybe October, so we couldn't go to school. Then we would go back to Idaho, Utah, wherever, to start all over again. So for us, we couldn't hear what was going here. So when I started working for the Migrant Council, it was because of Corky and Lalo Delgado and all those other people in Denver, you know, in other different areas that would give us information. And that's how we started learning about what was going on. We didn't, you know, they were starting daycare centers. That's what we were doing up north. But we didn't have the same power. You know, we didn't have the support. And especially if you were a woman, you had to be very careful, because usually, in my case, at the Utah Migrant Council, I was the only female that had directorship of all the daycare centers. In Idaho, it was the same thing. I was the one that started all the migrant daycare centers. Each center had to have a director, a nurse, and a person in charge of the food. And remember, we had, throughout the state, we had different daycare centers. And one of the reasons that I stopped working at the Idaho Migrant Council is because one of the guys that I had in one of my centers was hired to be my boss. Okay? So here I am, the only female that had a place as director, was no longer the director because somebody else was doing it. So that sent me to work in the potato factories, because I quit. And the potato factories, it was the same thing. Men had different kinds of jobs than we did. And of course, they would get paid more than we did, okay? That's making boxes, whatever, you know, peeling potatoes, whatever. We, as women, got paid less. So when all this was happening and these guys came over and recruited me, by then, I knew I had to do something. Because remember, we really didn't have any of this information. Unless, of course, we went to Corky and, you know, other people. That's where we would hear what was going on. Because we didn't get all that. So by the time that I got here, I had an idea of what was going on, but not the actual valley work that they were doing. We were doing, you know, different kinds of work, but it was for Chicanos, and it was especially for children, and it was for education and for women. And remember, at that time, we had a lot of sterilization of Latinas. Mexican women were getting sterilized. They would go in and have a baby, and they would sterilize them, so they would have no more babies, okay? And they did that in San Antonio. And we had to fight against all those things coming from over there. So what they did here was an amazing base for us to continue. And we knew that it could be done. So thank you, everybody, for being here. Don't forget to vote. I'm a member of Mothers for Democracy. I'm a member for Mothers Against Abbott and all those things. And I will be supervising registration and voting. So get out there. You have a good guy, a bad guy. If you don't vote for the good guy, the bad guy's going to get it. Think about it. We cannot have any more military attacking us in these towns. They're doing it already. We got to make a change, and we can do it, especially young people who have more strength and more power than we do now. We're a little bit old.
Amen.
Let me
Brief note on Petra here. She never tells that story, and I love that story. When she came to the colegio, they asked her, "You're gonna enroll?" She said, "Yeah." She said, "Do you have a GED?" And she says, "What's a GED?"
Well, they asked me for my high school diploma first.
She thought they were talking about the HEB. So today she's doctor. Yes.
That was really funny. They asked me, the secretary said, we don't have your high school diploma. And I said, high school diploma? I dropped out of fourth grade. And they said, well, you can use your GED. And I said, GED?
What's that?
What? So they sent me to San Benito, which was the only place you could get a GED. And I went in there, and they gave me some paper. I told them that I wanted my GED.
Yeah, but before you went to San Benito, you were getting tutored to prepare yourself for the exam.
But the thing is that,
Because I was
Yeah.
overseeing that program.
Yeah.
And I know for a fact that many of our people, let me correct several things. There was a mentioning of only 60 students involved in the colegio. That's far-fetched. The actual number of the bodies that went through the colegio was more in the neighborhood of 200. Okay. The point I'm trying to make with this is that the colegio had further impact that people can understand or can even imagine. Let me pick up on a couple of points that were brought up in the discussions. First of all, Lali was describing the legacy that she has developed over the years. Okay, let me share mine so you can understand some of the things that have impacted your life right now. Let me say, for instance, how many of you are familiar with Channel 60 or seen PBS? Do you have any idea when it was created or who founded that station? ¿Verdad que no? Do you realize that the original call letters, the original letters of that station was KZLN? What do you think KZLN stands for?
Aslan.
Aslan. Because it became the first Chicano station in the country. Not too many people recognize that or understand that it actually happened. And the reason why is because if we're not around to write the history, somebody else is going to write it for us. And let me give you a very clear example of what I'm talking about. I was invited, when I was doing some volunteer work for my church, I was invited to PBS, so the KMBH Channel 60, to talk about the fundraisers that we were doing at the church. Okay, and as presenters in that panel, we were given a little mug, a coffee mug. And I looked at it, and it had the KMBH 60, and then it had the 1985 to 1920, or 1990, whatever it was. And I told the individual there that this date is wrong. The actual startup date of the station was May 5th, el 5 de Mayo, 1980. 1980. And you know what the response was? Oh, yeah, we know that, but we don't recognize the first 5 years. Those are the 5 years that we spent, we as Chicanos operating the station, okay? And so the people that came afterwards erased the history of the first 5 years of us creating the first Chicano station. I have a plaque that was given to me by the Corporation of Public Broadcasting recognizing the station in San Benito as the first Chicano station, okay? That's one. And because of that, again, I was invited during the Carter administration to go and speak at the White House to talk about Chicano communications. Now, I was reading in the internet. Okay, internet never lies, right?
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So I was trying to understand the origins of Chicano studies and the origins of some of the national associations, and the thought came through my mind that there's something wrong with this picture. In 1973, there were 5 Chicano colleges that met in Albuquerque with the idea of creating the National Association of Chicano Colleges. Okay, it doesn't exist. All right, it was not, because what happened with Channel 60 is also what happened with the Colegio. Okay, here and in Fresno, California, in Oregon, in Denver, even with the Puerto Ricans in New York, we all fell aside because of the our white masters. Okay. And when I say white masters, I'm just being cynical here. The point I'm trying to make about the white masters, I'm talking about the mechanism that's used to undermine our efforts.
Yeah.
And when I say undermine our efforts, I'm talking about infiltrators. I'm talking about military vigilance, surveillance, law enforcement vigilance. And so all of those have a tendency to undermine any kind of movement or any type of organization. I'm just fearful, and don't mind me saying this, I'm very fearful that if there's anyone here who is a government representative, if you know what I mean. Okay?
Yep.
So, because I don't know everybody here personally, so the thought goes through my mind is there a government representative that's going to be waiting for me outside with somebody with
La migra.
La migra? I mean, if U.S. citizens are being arrested, who am I to not to be arrested?
Yep.
Okay, so think about it. We're in the process of losing our rights. Okay, you may not recognize it, but they are. Okay, let me give you something to think about. As part of my preparation for being here, I wanted to give you some food for thought. Okay, so especially young people.
Yeah.
Okay, you can pass that on and think about it. In 1940, okay, and that's U.S. Census Bureau. Okay, with showing these numbers. In 1940, there was in the Texas population 738,000 Mexicanos in Texas. Okay, compared to 4,764,000 white people or white population. The Mexicano population represented 15% of the population in Texas. Okay, in 1940. 30 years later, the Hispanic population went up to 1,981,000. Compared to 7,796,000, we had an increase to 25%. Okay, so in 30 years, the population of Mexicanos increased by 10%. In 1990, the population of Mexicanos was 4,339,000. Okay, compared to 10,291,000. 10,291,000. In 1990. The Mexicano population represented 42,000. What's the difference between 42% compared to 25% in another 20 years? So we increased, 17% in population between 1970 and 1990. In the year 2020, the Hispanic population is now over 11,454,000 compared to 14,601,000. We had a jump to 78%. Okay, so the 11 million compared to 14 million. We represent in Texas, we meaning Hispanics, we represent as an estimated over 70% of the population. Now, my question is this, and it bothers me to say this, to no end, okay? Like Lali was saying, we're Democrats, fine, okay, that's fine. But I prefer to identify myself as old Raza Unida, okay? But here's my point. In this past election, okay, do you know that all the counties, Starr County, Hidalgo, Cameron, and Willacy, which I'm more familiar with, they all went Republican. They all went Republican. And some of the individuals, I'm not saying this to offend anybody, but I'm just saying this. What has happened in a period of 4 years, that when there was the political leaning was Democrat to become Republican, okay? We had allowed it to happen. So what's happening right now with ICE in the streets, what's going on with the abuse of elderly, the abuse of our civil rights, or the abuse of our voting rights, it's our fault. Our fault. There's nobody to blame but us, okay? Because we're not, like Petra was saying, we're not going out and doing our part, okay? So whatever happens in the next few years, because we have 3 more years, okay? Whatever happens, don't point the finger and say, no, que él lo hizo, que los Democrats lo hizo, los Republicanos lo hizo. It's us.
us.
We allowed it to happen.
Yep.
Es la verdad, es la verdad. And I hope I don't offend anybody, but
They want to ask some questions.
okay, that's fine. Thank you. But I'm emphasizing this point. Now, I'm going to finish this. The other question is, we have several PhDs here in Chicano studies, okay? And I asked my nephew, Carlos, who's also a PhD, a very basic question. Do you know what, have you seen the forest for the trees? And he said, what are you talking about? You're a PhD. Derek is a PhD. And there's several other PhDs. Has anybody asked, where did the curriculum come from that guided you to get your degrees? Okay. What were the seeds? What was the origin of those programs? And I did some research to look at the origins of Chicano studies. The most I could find was that the professors in California saying, well, I wrote a paper on as part of a symposium calling for Chicano studies a curriculum. And I did this and I did that, but they were all advocating for a curriculum. Mm-hmm. The point I'm trying to make is who actually sat down and wrote it, okay? The point is that it was done at Jacinto Trevino, okay? And under a grant from the Sanford Foundation out of Missouri. It was a grant that went through Antioch College to us to write it, okay? Victor was a major part in organizing the structure of the curriculum, because we had our own pedigrees, our own understanding of developing the curriculums. My own degree from Antioch is in curriculum development and supervision, okay? So I specialize in curriculum development. With the participation and involvement of the other people who are involved with the colegio, we all contributed to developing the curriculum. We finally got it printed, took it to Antioch. The only thing I can conclude out of this is that the Antioch took the lead and forwarded to other colleges. Let me share with you
Actually,
why.
Pancho, I'm sorry, but we have to take some questions.
Me gusta hablar, porque I have a lot of information to share with you, and this is a tremendous opportunity. So I'm sorry, but that's the way it is.
as always, we're going to have time after the roundtable to ask questions, but we wanted to give a little moment for everyone before our Frontera Dance Project performance in the library, to give the time and the space to you all, the audience, to ask any questions you want about El Colegio Jacinto Trevino to these wonderful individuals here. So please ask away. Carlos has the mic. Feel free.
I was too young to have been directly involved in the Chicano movement, but I did work with Chicano-based organizations like Proyecto Vida, Troqueros del Valle, and such. And I got word that the archives at Jacinto Trevino College somehow wound up in San Juan. So I wonder, where are they? You all had a lot of materials, texts.
I'll tell you where
archive-
they are.
I'm sorry?
I'll tell you where they are.
Well, okay, espérate. Mira, and my question has to do with this. Since Jacinto Trevino College is folded, have you or have anyone considered establishing, including those archives and others that I could contribute? I have lots of Chicano literature. To establish a Chicano studies library in the valley
Yeah.
to follow the legacy of Jacinto
Yeah.
Trevino College.
Very good
Yeah,
question. May I answer that really quick?
And I got another part of the answer.
There's a gentleman by the name of Vicente Carranza, who was our librarian here at the Colegio, and he lives in Corpus Christi. And if you walk into his house, he has turned his house into an institution of documents. He holds hundreds and hundreds of documents and has digitized and created different programs, beginning with Chicano music, Chicano this, Chicano, a whole institution is there with this guy. But the universities this time are fighting for those documents. They all want it. And he is 87, 88.
Algo así, yeah.
88. And he's desperately looking for a way to do something like that. So I put you in contact with Mr. Carranza.
Yeah.
Seguro.
That-
Yeah.
Vicente Carranza, yo le doy su número de teléfono y todo, y le hablo a él. Y le hablo a él y digo que le va a hablar a usted.
And you can have my support, whatever you're going to be doing.
Yeah, let me share this with you because I already had some discussions with some folks here from Mercedes. You know, across the street is an abandoned building, the old police station and fire department. Many of our people, the colegio, had experiences at that building. Okay, and I'll just leave it at that. What I propose to some of the people that live here in Mercedes is this: there's enough resources in-house. When I say in-house, locally, to fund a cultural center in Mercedes, okay? And going beyond just a cultural center, because Lupe and I have discussed, because his background also has a lot of folkloric, teatro rather, a lot of teatro experience. Our children lack the understanding of what teatro is about, okay? As part of our culture, I think it's important to teach teatro, okay? As part of your idea or the discussion that you have about a museum, or a library, that's
That's
tremendous.
really important.
That building lends itself for resources to be mobilized in-house by Mercedes to restore it, convert it into a cultural center. That's been my proposal for some time to the local residents
That's what they're doing also in San Juan,
in San Juan.
where the old hotel.
He's got a question over there.
Question.
I'm here from the San Juan Hotel and the 956 Museum.
Yeah.
That is what we're trying to.
Yeah.
That is what we would want
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
to have once, and we will.
Are you a 501c?
I'm sorry.
Are you a 501c?
A nonprofit.
Nonprofit. No.
Nonprofit.
Nonprofit.
I
We are a nonprofit.
Great.
Yeah.
We'll talk.
Yes.
Definitely.
We're ready.
Yeah.
We're ready to pasarle el saco de pescar to somebody else.
Mire, let me share with you a little bit about history behind in the San Juan Hotel because I'm from Alamo originally. Okay, I lived in Alamo for many years, and I was working for San Juan for a couple of years as a planner. Years later, there in San Juan, I developed a school specializing in health education or health careers. Okay, I had the intention of buying the building, San Juan Hotel, and restoring it for the school, my school. The problem I encountered was that obviously to begin the process, I had to go to the city to begin the process of permits and whatnot. What I discovered later was that one of the city commissioners, who happened to be a banker, bought the building from under me. Okay, because they already had the same idea of or taking the idea from me to go to the Texas Historical Commission and get grant funds to restore the building. That resource is still available. Okay, if you know anything about grant writing, that's part of the legacy I'm talking about. Understanding the history behind community efforts. That's one piece. The other piece is that
But they still want to ask some questions.
Yeah, they still need some
Let's have
questions.
some questions.
Maybe you can get together with them.
yeah, well, I'll be here to answer
Yeah.
questions.
Carlos, how much time do we have before we?
The performance next door is gonna start at 12, but we can push it to 12:05. It's 11:51.
Okay, thank you.
What time do we serve food?
You're on your own.
Lali wanted to say something. I'm sorry, she's been
Yeah, okay,
getting questions.
yeah, I need to say something. I need to say something that we did not trust the books in the schools. And so we had to look for books from professors like Dr. Galarza, Dr. Fuentes, Carlos Fuentes, you know, Americo Paredes. Those were the books that we studied. The government of Mexico, at that time, the president was Luis Echeverria. He donated, Victor, and there was a delegation that went to Mexico City,
To Lonam.
to the UNAM. We went to Mexico City several times. You went with the teatro also. And I went only once, well, twice. But the government of Mexico donated to us. We had the most beautiful collection of history books, art books, history of the Mayans, pictures of everything you can think of the pyramids of Mexico. We had them right here in Mercedes. Beautiful stuff. We had it here.
We took
And I don't know what happened to it.
We took a picture with David Siqueiros. We
Yeah,
met
Doc
him there. and
Siqueiros,
we
the
talked.
painter.
Hold on.
What? Well, he was the librarian, and at the end of the
He was a librarian.
he was the librarian. He took very good care of the books, and you know, he started the library, and when everything began to
Yeah,
break,
but it was under the
He
direction.
wanted to protect them.
He
He
began
wanted
to
to
take some
protect them.
books. He saved us.
No.
Yeah.
He's very
Guys, come
careful.
on, there's questions.
I-
Come on.
we had one question.
We have one more question,
Yeah.
and then we gotta take the show
All
next
right, all
door.
right, all right.
Okay, here we go.
Long-winded
Buenas
Mexicans.
tardes. Brown Berazer Recruiting too. Can you guys elaborate real quick on the liberation theology, liberation college curriculum that we had that produced hard-line activists that went into the community where everybody spread out, went to different parts of the United States, and we continue to be active, and now we continue to confront ICE, que está levantando a toda la gente,
Yeah.
que está creando muchos
Yeah,
crímenes
yeah.
criminales, no due process, and how that has helped us produce that we have become what we become today because of Jacinto Trevino, because of the Liberation College curriculum.
Yeah, well, I don't know if we have time, but
Yeah.
I want to say something very briefly on that. In 1970, when the Colegio was founded here, Antioch was in its first stage of establishing the university without walls concept. And that was implemented here in the Colegio. We had classes for the community, you know, people that work, mothers that work, fathers that work, they attended courses, college courses, and they supervised a lot of the students that at the colegio, they had to go and present to the community. So the community was, there was no difference. And I think that was part of the discussion that people talk about, the difference in the colegio that happened. It came because of that, because we could not stop being part of the community. It was study in the morning, in the afternoon, you go out and organize. I'm sorry.
Let me add to something. Carlos, I gave Carlos this morning the original document of the curriculum that included a segment dealing with liberation theology, the actual curriculum of how to conduct lessons addressing liberation theology, addressing liberation tactics. So, because that element of the curriculum was how can I put it, was modeled after the Antioch efforts to develop a school in Venezuela and in Colombia. Okay, if you know the history of liberation theology, Venezuela and Colombia was the root of the actual practice of liberation theology, on the radical side, if you know what I mean.
Father Torres.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I would like to thank the audience and invite the audience to continue this discussion afterwards, and to give a big round of applause for our panelists. Thank you.
And so, yes, I encourage everybody to continue this conversation. In fact, after we leave, after the event, we're going to Nanas and Westlaco. I can't pay for everybody, but I'm inviting everybody to come and have a conversation. Let's keep this conversation going, all right? Thank you all. Thank you. Great audience.
Yeah, to make it a series.